Imagine a science fiction world where a magic pill can ease any pain, the lame can walk, the blind can see. Now, what does this world look like? Does it look like pristine buildings, everything surgical and hospital-like the Brave New World? Does it look like the inside of a giant spaceship, like the Death Star? Or does it look more like the dingy neon-ridden streets of Neuromancer or Blade Runner? Maybe you got the hint based on the title of the video that this is the world as it is today. I can report that all of these things can coexist. We live today in a world of science fiction. Technology has never been more advanced, and the world has never been more automated, and information has never been shared faster. We live today in a world of cyberpunk. The city nightlife still teems with a neon glow, signs of the technology of years past. Victims of life are using these scientific technologies in an effort to find a way to survive a world that's trying to leave them behind. But when did science fiction become nonfiction? First, I'd like to introduce the concept of transhumanism. It's defined by the Encyclopedia Britannica as a philosophical and scientific movement that advocates the use of current and emerging technologies such as genetic engineering, cryonics, artificial intelligence, and nanotechnology to augment human capabilities and improve the human condition. Many today will tell you that transhumanists seek to quote-unquote upload your conscious and that they're trying to play God. And I'm not here to say that this isn't true necessarily, but I want you to think about what the idea behind transhumanism really is, and I want to share some conclusions with you. First, let's start with the definition. Excuse me, Flora. Transhumanists seek to improve upon the human condition using technology. This is a relatively new concept, of course. People only started to record ways to treat human conditions as early as 2600 BC in Egypt. Is that correct? Yeah. But I can hear you say this isn't modern technology or medicine. And you're right, they were only doing treatments like skin grafting, technology that still hasn't been perfected today and that tissue engineers are still working on. First mentioned in the Ebers Papyrus in 1500 BC. Over 3,000 years ago, and we're still trying to fix it. The Egyptians are the first to have reportedly developed prosthetics also. What I'm saying is human advancement isn't something new. In fact, engineering can be viewed as the philosophy of advancement through technology. One of the first things that's taught in engineering school is the idea of the simple machine. Quote, these are the simplest mechanisms known that can use leverage or mechanical advantage to increase force. The simple machines are the inclined plane, the lever, the wedge, the wheel and axle, the pulley, and the screw. These simple machines were literally developed to help humans overcome the human lifting weight itself. Why then is transhumanism an issue only now? I have a couple of ideas. First, I want to discuss where science fiction began, because this is going to help inform when science fiction pervaded into society. I would argue that the first quote-unquote mainstream or culturally relevant depiction of science fiction and by extension transhumanism was in 1818, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. This was one of the first commercially available examples of scientific fiction ever. The scientists had written books before and fiction had been written, but this is when they really merged and brought the idea to a broader audience. There's been a modern resurgence in the idea that Frankenstein's monster was the victim and that he's a tragic character, but the sentiment is not necessarily held in modern examples. To create life, more specifically artificial life, non-human, or at least in human biology, is something that is still at best speculation, but you already have people who are denouncing this artificial life for what it is, being not human. It's a philosophical debate in and of itself to discuss what it means to be quote-unquote alive. And as we continue to advance in artificial intelligence, it will become more necessary to come up with an agreed-upon definition. When will we create a silicon biology? Can a program be alive? Does the lack of a physical body necessarily mean an absence of life? Can an idea itself be alive? The people who can and eventually will answer these questions will be the people who are thinking about them. Now, to switch gears for a moment, I want to discuss cyberpunk as a genre. Those who know me know that I'm a fan of genres, and the ideas that they hold. But what are cyberpunk's core traits? What makes something cyberpunk? And it's a nebulous question to ask, of course, and some may agree or disagree. For me, at least, from an aesthetic standpoint, there needs to be neon lights, dark alleys, substance abuse, perhaps physical augmentation, the hallmarks of Neuromancer. But what do these visual keys represent? I'm not meaning from a metaphorical standpoint, but what does the environment tell you about the world? What I see is part of a city that's been forgotten. The business sector has created its own world that doesn't need to exist within the electric glow, and as such, the money has stopped existing in this world. Cyberpunk represents parts of a world that were once modern, but has now become the past. Old technologies from a world that has left it behind and does not care anymore. Usually these settings are the centerpiece for a criminal underground, in part because this makes for compelling storytelling, but we are also taught that this makes sense through the media. The same way that movies indicate dangerous areas by having poorly lit parts of town or dark alleyways. Well, there could be something said about how the dark hides an unknown, which could trigger a fight or flight response. You never know what's hiding inside the dark. I think it is worth mentioning that this is a classic movie trope. As long as they've been using shadows as a film device, they've treated lighting as a character in movies in itself. This has become ingrained in culture. Think about film noir or German expressionism using shadows as a physical part of the scenes. What these areas really represent are places that the local government is neglecting. The lights are failing, the infrastructure is not being updated to keep up with the modern technologies. The law enforcement isn't protecting and serving. The businesses are losing their work, and the rest of the world moves forward while these areas are left behind. So, for the cyberpunk world that we're creating in our minds through this thought experiment, let's create a character. Let's say a man who is a veteran. He served in combat, and for his service, he came out with one of his legs missing. The science fiction world has a way around it. We can create a new leg that functions just as well, if not better, than the old one, and we can make it specifically for this person. If the leg hurts, we have cures. We can come up with a name for it, something like, opioids. It will make any of the pain disappear, all of the pain disappear. And just like that, he can re-enter society. But this society is developed in a way that won't easily allow him to re-enter, or at least doesn't want him to re-enter. So instead, he wanders around the darkened streets before finding a bar that has a neon sign, the signal that the business decided that this cutting-edge lighting implement would be perfect to signal to the world growing around it that they were open and ready for business. But now it stands alone on an empty street as the last candle that is yet to be extinguished by neglect. The world we live in today is a world of science fiction, whether we like it or not. Viewpoints of what this means range from, we need to stop, we can't progress as a society unless we are all advancing together, to, this is what I know how to do, and this is the best use of my abilities to build a better world for all. There's no answer to living in a science fiction world because it's not a problem that needs to be solved necessarily. It's simply a fact of life that a lot of people haven't come to terms with. The crux of this exists in the misinformation regarding the idea of the transhumanist movement. The idea of, quote, shedding this mortal coil, or whatever it is, not in the lexicon of the scientists who are trying to advance the human condition. Despite this, the idea of uploading our mind to the cloud is one of the premier talking points. If we were to live in an anti-transhumanist world, we would be foregoing ibuprofen, central heating, refrigeration, transportation, art, music, books, record keeping, information sharing, or anything else that has ever been created by a human. To be a human society is, I believe, to be a transhuman society. Society itself can be considered a transhumanist concept as society is developed around the idea of protection and assistance, things that humans on their own can't create as effectively. Now, the purpose of this is not to convince you that the transhumanist movement is a good one, or that the people denouncing it are bad. The purpose is to illustrate the world around us as a one that is changing. It always has, and it will likely always continue. The world as it is today exists as one that was once dreamed of, all the good and the bad. We're entering into an era where advancement could be on the cusp of history-altering achievements. We could be at the dawn of creating a new form of life. We could be at the dawn of curing terminal diseases. The steps we take from here moving forward as a society will define whether we live in a utopia or a dystopia, and it is fair to ask whether there's actually a difference between the two. Or more accurately, which will you be experiencing? The actions you can take as an individual to prepare is to think about the concepts that we've talked about, and other concepts such as what does it mean to be alive? Should I treat my pain, my physical or my emotional pain? How can the world around me be supported by me? Do the people who wield power work in my interest? Are the things they say fact and absolute? It's a lot of dissonant concepts and a lot of things that don't necessarily have answers, or at least not blanket answers. But really, it's just a thought exercise of how you can prepare yourself for what's to come. To end, I want to share my own personal opinions and how I approach my own life. Well, I made this video essay as a project to encourage thought. It's okay to do things without having to have deeper thought about them. For example, did I do this as a way to try to change society? No. I made it because I like video essays and I enjoy cyberpunk, and I feel like I have a unique perspective in the world of biotechnology as someone who is a bioengineer myself. I thought it would be fun. Everything now is so serious and has to be prescribed a reason, when at the root of it, the thing that makes us human is our curiosity and willingness to explore and adapt. I have a cat toy that is a fish that has a motor in it, and the motor causes the tail to flop around. And I like to imagine that an engineer one day was sitting around and thought, that would be a neat toy. And I agree. I do think it's cool. I think it's fun. I don't think we're facing an ocular-level extinction event with the way we're developing technology. I simply think the world is going to continue to change, and we need to be ready for the change, and not only be able to worry about it, but be able to find the fun in it.